Homes may lose power in the cold weather, and that means the generators come out. Mallory West joins us with a warning because those can be dangerous right now.
That's right, Jennifer. The U.S. Product Safety Commission estimates around 100 people die each year from generators, and thousands are poisoned.
January can mean a variety of weather events. One in particular is freezing temperatures.
But unfortunately, in the past, we have picked up patients that have had carbon monoxide poisoning. The biggest thing is that it's kind of an insidious gas. It's odorless, tasteless. You can't see it. It really creeps up on you.
Acadian Ambulance says they've seen firsthand the damage that generators can cause, especially if a person doesn't know the symptoms of carbon monoxide poisoning.
It ends up being like you're dizzy really easy if you stay too long in the carbon monoxide. You get nausea, vomiting, and you just end up being really weak.
When using a generator, it's always important to remember the safety tips that come along with it. Some of these tips can include never using it in wet weather, keeping it dry and safe to avoid electrocution. It's also very important to turn it completely off and let it cool before refueling. And most importantly, always leave it in open and well-ventilated areas to avoid carbon monoxide poisoning.
Chief Harris from the Ouachita Parish Fire Department says he's seen his fair share of fires from generators as well, and says it's crucial to remember the importance of safety.
Life is fleeting. It is very important to maintain life safety for you, for your loved ones, for our children, and even for some of us, for our adults. It is incumbent upon us to make sure that we keep ourselves and those around us protected.
For more information on generator safety, visit our website, knoe.com. Back to you.